Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a story pretty much everyone knows, Noah's flood. But we're going to ask a question that might actually change how you see it. You know the image, right? A total world-ending cataclysm, a complete planetary reset. But is that really what the original text describes? Or have we maybe been filling in the blanks with our own assumptions? Yeah, most of us, when we picture it, we see a flood that wiped out everything, every single living thing, from tiny bugs to massive fish in the ocean. But let's actually go to the source. Let's see what the text itself has to say. All right, so to really get to the bottom of this, we've got to become textual detectives for a minute. We're going to look really closely at the specific, super precise language that the book of Genesis uses when it talks about the flood's destruction. And right away, we hit this single verse, and wow, is it precise. It doesn't just say everything died. No, it's way more specific. It actually draws a very, very clear line in the sand, a boundary for what was destroyed. So check this out. The text lays out two crystal clear conditions for what was on the chopping block, so to speak. First, you had to live on dry land. And second, you had to have the breath of life in your nostrils. Basically, you had to be a land-based air breather. If you didn't check both of those boxes, you weren't on the list. And this whole idea gets even stronger when you look at a key Hebrew phrase that's used over and over and over in the flood story. It's Penei ha'adamah, and it literally means the face of the ground. Now, this isn't just some poetic flair. It's a technical term, really. It's pointing specifically to the world of humanity, the dry, exposed land where people live and farm. It's not talking about the sea. And you can see how this works everywhere in the Bible. This term is always used for dry land. It's where Cain is banished to, it's where plants grow, it's where Abel's blood cries out from. It's the human sphere. And it's completely, totally separate from the world of the sea, which, by the way, has its own specific words in Hebrew. So when the text gives us the official death list, the list of what was wiped out from this face of the ground, look what's on it. It's a very specific land-based list. This isn't a catalog of all life on Earth, right? It's a list of air-breathing life that lives on the land. And what's really interesting is what's not on this list. And here's the kicker. This is not an accident. It's not like the writers just forgot about fish. They absolutely knew how to talk about sea creatures. They do it just a few chapters earlier in the creation story. So they deliberately left sea life off the destruction list. And when an author does something that deliberate, you know it's a big deal. That silence is screaming at us. So this deliberate choice to leave out sea life leads us to a really important question. Why? Why was the judgment so surgical? I mean, think about it. If the goal was just to wipe out all life, then leaving the entire aquatic world untouched seems like a pretty massive oversight, doesn't it? But what if a total biological wipeout wasn't the goal? What if the whole point was something much more specific? Well, the text in Genesis 6 is totally clear on this. It says the reason for the flood is a direct response to human wickedness. It says the earth was filled with violence and had become corrupted specifically because of what people were doing. The problem wasn't biology, it was morality. So when you put it side by side like this, the logic just clicks into place. The judgment was aimed squarely at humanity's world, their sphere of influence, the dry land. The land animals and the birds, well, they were kind of caught in the crossfire because they shared that same corrupted space. But the sea creatures, they lived in a totally different realm, completely outside of humanity's moral mess. So a good way to think about it is like this. God is hitting the reset button, but only on the corrupted human world. He's wiping the slate clean to give it a fresh start. The land, the human domain, disappears under the water, and then it comes back out, clean, ready for a new beginning. It's a targeted decreation of the land, not a total annihilation of the whole planet. Okay, so this all leads to a really important point, not just for this story, but for reading any ancient text. And that's knowing the difference between what the text insists we believe and what it just leaves open. Which, of course, brings us to the question that always comes up. You knew it was coming, right? What about the dinosaurs? And this is the perfect example of where we tend to smash our modern scientific questions into an ancient story that was trying to answer something completely different. So this little table here does a great job of separating those two things. On one side, you have the core theological points of the story, the stuff the text is really about. That the flood was a divine judgment and that God mercifully preserved a remnant. On the other side, you have the stuff the Bible just isn't all that concerned with answering, like the exact fate of the dinosaurs or whether some species of fish went extinct. And this restraint, it's a feature, not a bug. The text is incredibly disciplined. It stays laser-focused on the main point, the moral and covenantal story it's trying to tell. It refuses to get sidetracked by all these other questions about biology or geology that, frankly, just aren't the point. Because at the end of the day, the story of the flood isn't meant to be a biology textbook or a geological survey. It's a deep, powerful story about humanity's relationship with God. And that leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to chew on. What do we lose when we get so caught up in trying to create extinction charts that we miss the story's real weight, the stuff about judgment, mercy, and the incredible promise of a new beginning?